Hello floppers and floppettes, I hope you're all okay and welcome back. So, just quickly, I haven't had a chance to read any comments, so I do apologise if you have already commented to say you want it done from start to finish or finished to start. However, I've decided we're going backwards anyway. So a lot of research has gone into this. Valentine Lowe is a very good researcher, and he will touch on the facts as best he can, and he will get as much as he can. And so far, it's quite juicy. So I'm going by what the research has led to, and I'm going to point to some positives about Mr. Overseas before Mrs. Overseas came along. And now, apart from his typical teenage years, I mean, none of us were angels when we were growing up. And sometimes you've got to wonder if the media did actually hype it up a bit more than, make it look worse than it actually was. Apart from that certain uniform he went to that party, and that's when it did start getting concerning, didn't it? So apart from all of that, he was doing it really, really well before. There was so we'll go to the negatives afterwards, but I'm going to be fair on him on this, just to point out the positive things. And people might say that the book is being too kind to him, but I'm not sensing that. I'm sensing this actually was the situation at that current time. I think he was, by what people are saying, he was genuinely wanting to, support the monarchy and do good things. But we'll get to the other, the disappointing parts after that. So here we go. So he done well, despite the teenage, malarkey and shenanigans. He was really, really interested in ideas that most royal, like, when they used to go on the royal trips or royal tours, as sometimes we call them, they'd rather miss some of the adventures that he would want to do. For example, he wanted to go to Brazil on the street in the dangerous areas to highlight the issues around drugs and the failings of the government that have made people be left behind. And he genuinely wanted to do that, and he went right in there, spoke to everybody, and it worked. That was a bit of a success for him, bless his heart. And he also didn't, and it says here, he also didn't really care if the travel arrangements were not up to royal standard. He didn't care much for that. So that's very interesting, because now it's quite the opposite, isn't it? He always showed a positive attitude, even when things are not going to plan. You saw the best of him when we were on those types of tours. So that's really good to hear, actually. We'll go over to there. I do sense along the line that there is a bit of a. It's hard to explain this one. It started off as a genuine, why is he doing that? Why is he doing that like his brother? Why is he doing that? But obviously, the Prince of Wales went along with his guidance and everything like that. But his brother, the Mr. Overseas, wanted to get on and get things done. He became quite frustrated with the system, which leads on to the other part in a minute. He just didn't understand why they couldn't make their own decisions and try and make it work as best as possible. But he did manage to get his own way, not yet get his own way in that sense, but it proved he had a point. It was like he was trying to prove a point that we have got brains of our own and we can use them quite wisely. And he did. And he proved to the system, if you like, that, their own personal ideas can actually work as well. So that was a good start in my opinion. Right, where are we? I had to write some of this down. Mr. Overseas wanted things to be, yeah, that's another thing. He wanted the trips and looking after him. He wanted to make it fun for himself and the staff, and he would prefer to sort of, if they want to go and do a bit of sightseeing around Rome, for example, as one of his tours was at Rome, he would prefer to, instead of hanging around waiting for ages for this, that, and to be done, and so that they can go in safety, he wanted to just get out there among the public and just be a normal member of the public for that trip. He just wanted to get out and see Rome. That was his saying. And just, without all this faffing around. So he has got the positive brain cell of just getting on with it. Just like his grandfather, actually. Getting on with it. Let's get it done, over and dusted. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, at least we tried. So, like the staff and his, what was his name? His private secretary was saying, he was always looking for the good in a bad situation. So that's good. And he wanted always a good relationship with his team and other staff members. So just remember that, because that's important. He had some fun times with the Queen. Remember when he was doing his Invictus Games promotion, when he first started all that up? He wanted to get his grandmother involved, and he was a bit worried about asking her because he didn't want to put too much on her because of her age and everything like that. And so I personally think he was genuinely concerned. But anyway, he had to go and ask her anyway, and she loved the idea. I'll just read out what I've reworded it a bit to my own, so it's not a direct copy from the book. It says here, he asked her, the Queen, to get involved. She, of course, said yes, she'd love to. She said afterwards, after they'd done, that's when he'd done the mic drop. Afterwards, she said, "This was rather fun. You should get me to do this more often." So the Queen was really, really a fun woman to be around, and she loved the idea as well that Mr. Overseas wanted to try his own ideas out, and at that point, the majority of them were working out. It seemed that they were a happy family, so that's all good. So moving on to the negatives about Mr. Overseas. So before the witch came along, he already started to have his own beef with the media. I think he said when he was a teenager, they typed something inaccurately and they wouldn't change it or something. So that sort of like triggered him. And so we all know that the media are naughty, but at this current time, it is them doing all of it, really. It's just them trying to make more money, like we know. But at this point, it was genuine. They were being really naughty. So anyway, sort of like wrote letters, emails, or, sent to cease and detest letters, etc., etc. And so that all started. And then he seemed to get very frustrated at the system. He felt they were holding him back. So how I interpreted this at that time, going back to he wanted his own ideas, where this comes at this time, I wouldn't say it's jealousy. It was a kind of, he was noticing that his older brother was allowed to go and do the more exciting things, but on the rota, Harry had to do the boring things. That's how it came across to him, and that's why he made a bit of a fuss, just to prove a point that his own ideas can work as well. And it went more into detail about that, and this is where it all changed. Mrs. Overseas came along and had some strict, and this is from the staff and the private secretary, She came along and had some strict dividing lines only, and that only dealt with senior officials. So at that point, she's come in already and started dividing, segregating herself against, a good working team. It goes on to say that Mr. Overseas at that point, after he'd sort of dated Cressida and Chelsea and their bad experience with the media and the paparazzi and all that malarkey, they didn't want to be in the limelight. They hated it and couldn't handle it. And after that, Mr. Overseas was worried that it would keep happening. And so what happened was she came along, started dividing already, and then knew Harry felt like this regarding girlfriends, and just said to him, as we all know, what was it she says? If you don't put out a statement saying I'm your girlfriend, I will break up with you. So that was her threat already. After that, things got worse. Mr. Overseas demanded that Jason Knuth, that he put out a statement Megsy wanted. She wanted public validation. She also was convinced the palace didn't care about the girlfriend. She made quite a snarky comment about the girlfriends. She expected to be treated like royalty with a snap of a finger, and that's before she even met the Queen by the looks of it. She claimed they didn't support her, allegedly, public domain. In a statement, all the race card, etc., was used, discrimination, etc., etc., but doesn't say who put the words in. Was it all of Jason, or was, Cruella involved somehow? Considering, knowing Jason's history, he's not one to go out and put something out like that, a statement as, cringeworthy as that and untrue. So I think she did have a lot of say in this, and I think the blackmail, is at that point is probably worse than what we originally thought. I just can't see anyone like Jason bowing down to some girlfriend. So he seemed to be doing well before she came along. He genuinely did have a passion for what he was, really born to do. But then he started getting quite obsessed with the media and everything. And then Cruella came along. Yeah, so all of that positive thrown away and just sucked into this life of fraudulence, deceit, snaky behaviour, and just lies upon lies. But anyway, so that's the first little section. Hopefully it'll start getting on to more staff members and everything like that. So that's that part over. So finally, we have some good news. Something totally separate here from the book. Mr. and Mrs. Overseas Councillor of State positions has now been discussed in the House of Lords. Good news. Let's hope they listen to the public mood and do the right thing and remove that status from them. That's a positive. And in Cruella's latest Archie flop, she's going to be claiming that black women are labelled as angry. Well, in my opinion, just look at the people who are running after her. Look at what the Sugars get up to. So yes, in her world they're angry, yes. Like, she's a very angry person as well, isn't she? So like we know, flying monkeys also become that person to an extent anyway. So that's that, guys. But thank you for watching. I will read some more of that either later on or tomorrow. But for now, have a good evening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.